Absolutely, absolutely. Give me one.
Never for a reason. The reason's fine.
I was just checking.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, in case you were here for that part, because it's a little part.
Oh, that's in the back, right?
Anywhere you like. Did you get my agenda?
It's okay.
Oh, I will, give me a second.
Yeah.
But if you say,
Keep sending me.
this would be the thing, it just makes conducting business much more susceptible to varying views. It's ultimately, you make the reasons, and you decide, we're going to add buses or not. Done.
The old budget page one. He's under his own section. It's 9125824. He's listed. I don't know if you have that section in my budget. Continuing education is on page 117. This one, 26. So around 117. You're welcome.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. This is our budget workshop. Was there a piano form on this? As you all know, we have, well, first I'd like to welcome Mr. Kopak from the Town Council to us tonight. And as you all know, unfortunately, we've been asked to, or told to cut an additional $600,000 from our budget. So that's why we are here tonight to figure out how we're going to do that. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Conway.
Thank you very much. Administration gathered about a week ago and went through possible cuts, so I'd like to highlight those for you. We offered that list of cuts. The board, of course, has the entire budget at your purview to reduce or expand as needed. When you look at the worksheet you have in front of you, the second line down, medical insurance, it's a reduction of $131,151. That was due to, if you recall, about 4 years ago, 2011, we received a rebate from Cigna, I think it was at that point, for about $119,000, I think it was. The board did use 100 of that. There was still 19 in the kitty. Of course, we don't accept revenue, so it was with the town. It's supposed to be used for medical insurance premiums. Additionally, there were additional rebates that came in after that, and then there was one settlement for someone in the state who was working with a lot of different municipalities. So 3 different sources for that. The one warning I will give with that is that it would be a reduction to expenses. So when the first bill comes in, we would ask the town for access to those monies and pay the bill with that money. That means that next year, we still have that bucket to fill. So we'd be starting $131,000 lower than our actual cost for this year. We just happen to have some savings that has to be used for medical insurance. And so, so there would be that $131,000. If I can skip the next one, the unemployment insurance, and the next one, substitute teachers, I'll move down to other supplies and materials, toner. We were able to reduce our toner line item by just about $11,000, which is, we had toner in the new contract, all the toner is included, but not only all the toner, but most of the printers that we have some specialized printers, that was included as well, but we were able to reduce by that amount. The next is under pupil personnel services, a school psychologist. We had asked for a new position, a full-time position at Skinner Road School. Right now, Skinner Road and Northeast School share a school psychologist. This would put a full-time person at both schools. So we put that in there. Since it is a brand new position, we would be able to move that to the Alliance grant. We had eliminated in the Alliance grant a school social worker position for other reasons. And so, so this would not overburden the Alliance grant, wouldn't increase it by much, or increase by anything. The next, unfortunately, is a reduction of 3 full-time equivalent teachers at Rockville High School. I think Mr. Rocket has identified that that would most likely be, and of course, wouldn't be definite until all the course offerings are, selections are in by the students. They're actually in now, and so they're figuring out how many sections they have. But right now, it looks like that would be a special educator, a world language teacher, and a social studies teacher. In Vernon Center Middle School, that is a 7th grade team. So next year, there would be 3 6th grade teams, 2 7th, and 2 8th. Mr. Harrison, while not thrilled with that reduction, is looking at the glass half full. He's indicated that he has 7 special educators, and now we'll have 7 teams, so each special educator, rather than going between teams, will be assigned to 1 team. He has indicated that he has 4 world language teachers, and so each world language teacher would be assigned to a team for the 2 grade 7 teams and the 2 grade 8 teams. So he's making sure that he's having the best of all worlds. The world language teachers will become full members of the team rather than the small 32 or 37-minute classes. So that's where he's going with that. In Center Road School, replacing non-instructional equipment. That was a small refrigerator and a cot for the nurse's office, and it was bought this year. And so we absolutely can reduce that. The next was in Lake Street School, a general instruction classroom teacher. That was, if you recall, the board had wanted to fully fund the kindergarten teachers in the local budget. And so in the last reduction, the board took the 1.5 teachers out of Skinner Road and put that back in the Alliance grant. This was the last kindergarten teacher that was in local budget, and so this you would be putting this back into the Alliance grant. So they haven't made it into the local budget yet. The other 2 that I skipped, as you can see, in unemployment compensation, about 3 inches from the top, that's an additional $60,000. And that is because we would be eliminating 7 more teachers out of the 26 reductions. I think 17 or 18 would be unemployed. And so until they find another job, we would be having to pay their unemployment insurance. Substitute teachers, that was also a reduction. This budget, if the board adopts these 7 reductions here, this would be a reduction of approximately 7% of our teaching force altogether in the whole budget, and then we would drop that substitute teacher line item also by approximately 7%. So those are the 2 that were adjusted because of the other reductions, 1 up and 1 down. And so I would turn this over back to you.
Anybody have any, Mr. Stansel?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I have a couple questions for Dr. Conway, just for points of clarification, and maybe help me out a little bit as we're going through this budget tonight. When we create a new position, I guess specifically an administrative position, but maybe any position, do we have control over the the salary scale for that position?
There's a yes and no to that. No, in terms of if it's a union position, the salaries are set, so you can't bargain with someone and say, we're gonna pay you more than you because your position is more valuable. However, when someone is hired, it depends on the number of years of experience that they've had. Many of our, in fact, most of our contracts indicate that if someone has so many years of experience in another district, they would start on the next step here in our district. However, there are a couple of contracts that say no matter how many years experience you have, you are starting on step one. So it's probably no, we don't have control, and maybe a little bit of control depending on where people are coming from. We don't have to give credit for out-of-state and for private school, parochial school experience as a teacher.
Thank you. So when we create a new position, we literally cannot say, the maximum salary for this position will be X.
Only if it's a non-union position. There are about 35 of those, 30 of those.
Okay, thank you. That's it for right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Arthur?
Could I follow up with Mr. Stansel for a little more clarification? If it's a new position, how is that salary determined?
The new position right now on the table here would be, or that has been in discussion, is a school psychologist. That is in the teachers' union. So depending on where that person came in the salary schedule, so if they had 4 years experience in another district, they would start on wherever it was for our union, that people with 4 years experience were. We're not a one-to-one in our teachers' contract. It's a little bit different, but so they would come in on step 4. If they had a master's degree, they'd start in that salary lane, a PhD. So it's very prescribed if it's a new position.
I was actually thinking of the new position of Director of Teaching and Learning. That's a new position.
That is a new position, right? It is in the union, however, and the director position is second from the top, akin to the middle school principal position. And so in the discussion, certainly the board will have to make a decision, but they will have to negotiate with the union as to what a director earns. So that's what we've been budgeting at, is where the other director is, Director of Pupil Personnel.
So that $15,000 increase may not actually be a real increase.
I expect that it will be.
I'll tell you, when I had to go looking through the budget to find money, I was looking for ways to save teacher positions. And that was just my way to go at it. And I saw a couple of things that I wanted to ask about, like the HR administrative position in 51123 this year is $50,000. Next year it's 51111 for $75,000. And I'm wondering if that can't just stay an administrative assistant position and assist Dawn at the town side and combine some responsibilities rather than establishing a new position and increasing it by $25,000.
That would be a discussion for the board. It certainly would not be my recommendation to combine with the town. We've tried that before. I know the board thought that was.
Well, this would be a little bit different. In that there would, and it's my understanding that the person in that position is working with Dawn now anyway.
Oh, always. We always work with
Right.
the town. That's correct.
I'm wondering if that's anything that the board wants to talk about or dismiss. I know $25,000 doesn't pay for a teacher. I was adding up places where I thought could restore teaching positions. Okay.
Make a motion.
Okay. I move to.
I had a discussion before you moved.
Sure.
I think that consolidating services and putting together different organizations, town and school, would be a huge benefit to the taxpayers. And I think it's a good idea to look into it. My concern is that we have to get it all in place. And I understand that they are working together right now somewhat, but in the back of my mind, I've always thought that that would be a reasonable thing to do. But it would need to make sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted to make sure that the school board's unique HR is handled.
To Laura's point, if we don't do something about the position, then it's now in our budget and it would be very difficult. I hear what Mrs. Bush is saying. I wonder if, though, it wouldn't be appropriate to eliminate the position, allow the administrative assistant to continue to work with the town HR person to achieve that goal, and then, but I'm afraid if we leave it in the budget, we're kind of stuck with it because that's how they'll be working. So I'm going to move to eliminate the position of HR, Director of HR, and leave the remaining HR administrator in place at a salary of $50,000.
I'm sorry, before we go on, I'm confused. There is no HR director here.
It's an HR administrator,
Okay.
51123.
Okay, that's the administrative assistant.
Right.
Okay. Well, on this list, I'm just working on this list, it says Human Resources Administrator.
Which list? I'm sorry.
This big one.
Oh, I was using the budget. Okay.
It's almost halfway down.
It's like the fifth from the bottom on the, just on the bottom.
Okay. Then is the appropriate motion to reduce the salary of that position to $50,000 as it has been with the same responsibilities that have always been had?
If that's a motion you want to make.
What I'm trying to achieve is we don't need a human resources administrator at $75,000. We function without it, and we can keep that person, that position the way it is now and continue to work with the town.
I'm just, well, we need a second on the motion if that's what you're saying.
Second.
Okay. I'm gonna give my opinion now. I don't, because Mrs. Buell will be the pupil services director full-time, she's not going to be an HR person anymore. This HR administrator will be taking on far more duties than she has done in the past.
Maybe
So-
that's not part of the plan that I'm suggesting. That's all.
Does anyone else have any comments? We need a second, we do have a second, okay. Mr. Stenson.
So, any other year, I might agree that we should leave them separate, but we're in a serious bind here. And we're facing, significant cuts to staff that directly impact the students. And respectfully, I think that while some of the large-scale reorging that was proposed, might be a nice idea, this may not be the year to do it. So I understand where Michelle's going with this, and I am going to support this motion because I think we need to stay a little more status quo for some of these things.
Mr. Kemp?
If someone were to be hired for this position, they would expect, given the workload, to be paid something like the $75,000. And I don't know that anyone would respond to a $50,000 job posting, given the responsibilities that it has. So I'm concerned about that. But in your explanation, you said eliminate the Director of Human Resources, or whatever the appropriate title is here, and forget the verb you used, and make it work with the town. I'm not sure how this is supposed to. What did you mean? In your reasoning, you said that somehow we were going to work with the town to get the work done. How is that supposed to happen?
I think the person in that position is an administrative assistant.
All right.
And I I think with the assistance of an administrative assistant and working toward what Mrs. Bush was saying, that we would like to see the HR position at the town integrated with the board, with the support of that assistant. If they're planning to move that administrative assistant into director of HR, then she must have some skills. I have to assume that, or she wouldn't be moved into that position. So I'm saying that rather than bumping up a salary, we need to work toward combining the town resources with the board resources, with the support of the HR administrative assistant.
Well, I guess I'd want to know if the town were ready to accept that additional work and responsibility. We could pass all the motions in the world we want and say, well, we're going to work with the town and just call them up on the phone and say, oh, by the way, you're going to be doing more of our work for us. I mean, I can't see that happening necessarily. They may say, we'll do it, and they may say, no way. I mean, before we vote on something this important, it would be ideal if we knew what the town's position would be regarding taking on any work responsibilities that are currently done here at the board side.
If the person in that position is talented enough to take on the position of director of HR, then can't we assume that that person working with Mrs. Buell would be able to manage the HR needs until we can do something more permanent, like an arrangement with the town, or we find that we actually do need a director of HR. To Mr. Stansel's point, I don't think that we have money to be doing making those kinds of administrative changes when we have teachers that we're letting go. So I was trying to work toward a way to take care of the needs of the system with a little less money and a little less administration. So you're right, Mr. Kemp, it's not just call up the town and say this is what you're doing. It's with the maintaining the position as it is, with the idea that perhaps during the year they can start to combine efforts, they can learn from each other. Mrs. Buell has done the position, she just won't be it won't be her full-time responsibility, but those responsibilities can be taught and shifted to this HR administrative position with the assistance of the town HR person. They work together now.
Just as a point of clarification, there is no, Mrs. Buell was the director of HR part-time this year. There's no director of HR in the budget. The person is an HR administrator rather than administrative assistant. We have probably saved 3 times her salary this year, just with the work that Mrs. Buell and Mrs. Schnell have done together. It would have to be posted, it's a new position, so Mrs. Schnell has no right to a new position. She knows that. I do know she's working on certification right now to be on par with the town. There are huge buckets of work that the town, as Mr. Kemp indicated, that the town is not experienced in. They do nothing with our certification. They have licenses, we all have licenses, we have plumbers, we have nurses, etc., same as the town. But the certification, those things are gigantic that the town doesn't have, and so my request would certainly be, if this was going to happen, we took, I think, 10 or 12 or 18 months to determine that the Director of Public Works was overseeing our maintainers. That was a long contract. I would certainly want to give the town that same opportunity to have that conversation. But Mrs. Schnell herself does not have the rights to the administrator job. She has to apply for it. We have to post it. It's a new position.
Can I ask for clarification then? In the budget book, it shows Cindy Schnell $50,000 for this year and 0 for next year.
Because that position doesn't exist anymore. And so if you look above that, 4 or 5 inches, it will say administrator, and there should be no name there. She's not guaranteed a position for next year, that's why it doesn't say her name. And why there's no money there.
So we would need to eliminate the position.
Her current position's been eliminated in this budget, has been eliminated.
Right, but we can undo that, is what I'm asking. And my motion would undo that.
Mrs. Bush.
These budget cuts that we're going to be making, I understand that this one is one that we have some uncertainty about, but we do have a dollar amount that it would be its value. And although we would like to have everything, all the ducks in a row and everything like that, there is a possibility that the amount that we want to pay for an HR person is $50,000, and we've just reduced the budget to, down 25,000 before we decide that's exactly what we're going to do with it. We can have conversations with the town and work on that process. And at this moment, we can just say we will reduce $25,000, which will free up some money maybe to save up a little bit of a teacher or something. So we could table that motion and go to a motion to just reduce $25,000, knowing that this is a possibility that we might do that.
Mr. Burt.
For the chair, just to Mr. Stansel's point about not dealing with, messing with the status quo this year, just remind the board that we did already reorganize central office in this budget. We did lose 1.5 positions in this budget, and this position was a key role in that. As you know, I'll be taking over the HR functions next year, starting July 1. And with that, I did go to an Affordable Care Act seminar with Ms. Chanel, and the amount of information there alone for our employees is significant, and there are significant fines associated with that if we make any mistakes. So in that one instance alone, that we are going to have due diligence, and with the size of our employee force, I also would recommend that we hold on to this position as whole, as it currently is in the budget. Again, strictly just because of the sheer number of employees we have and the different types of employees we have, from hourly to salary. Just so you know, if we have our hourly employees, including our substitute teachers, that work over a certain amount of hours, then we have to offer them a health care plan. An affordable health care plan. And that is something that we need to stay on top of, or else there are significant consequences for the district. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to add? Mrs. Russell?
Just a couple of questions. When was she certified to fill this position?
I'm hoping by the end of the school year, but if she's, oh, I'm sorry.
May?
May. Thank you.
Of this year?
Any other questions, Tom? Do you have any other questions?
Oh,
No, okay, you said questions, plural, so
I did.
Sure, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking.
Okay, Mr. Kemp.
I'm not arguing the town's position, but if I were a town councilor or in the town government side, I might possibly be unhappy with the Board of Ed, because what we're saying is, well, we have some more work, and we would like to save some money here, to save teachers and to lower the taxes and all of that. But what we're going to ask is a town employee to get involved, and that town employee would certainly smell the coffee and say, hey, there's a whole bunch of money that they reduced from their budget, and I would like to be paid more for the additional responsibility. And so we would be handing the town an employee problem, because here we are saying we've got 25,000 we're going to reduce, and we're going to go ask town staff to do it. I just thought I'd mention that, because I just can't imagine that they'd be too thrilled with that prospect.
Mr. Stanton.
Well, Mr. Kemp, they certainly handed us an employee problem.
Pardon?
They certainly handed us an employee problem by whacking $600,000 off of our budget. So, part of the complaint that we heard was we don't work enough with the town. Well, we're asking to work with the town. And, I get it's not an ideal situation, but every dollar we save that we can potentially save teaching staff, I think is worth exploring.
With the permission of the seconder, I'm going to withdraw my motion but replace it with another.
It's done. It doesn't need a...
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to move to reduce account 51111 by $25,000.
That was your idea. 51111 to 25,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Excuse me a minute, I can't find it. Where is it?
It's in central administration.
It's the number's not put there, David, it's under Human Resources Administrator, correct?
About halfway down the page, David, 75,000.
In the first column.
Human Resources Administrator.
Right.
She's just reducing this line on the general control
I
line.
have looking at this page.
Right, she's reducing the general control line. It's not on there.
Yes,
It's a Human Resources Administrator, yeah.
It's the
Yeah, but
fifth
she's not
column up
specifically
from the
reducing
bottom.
the administrator, she's reducing the account, which is the general control account,
Right.
by $25,000.
From,
Is there any more discussion on this? Oh, wait, Mrs. Buell would like to say something, I'll let her speak on this.
Thank you for allowing me to express my thoughts on this. I just would bring you back to a year and a half ago, we had no HR department at all. And there was a distinct need to create this department. So you, as a board, agreed to create my position half-time, 2 half-time positions. So I'd remain as the Director of Pupil Services and Director of Human Resources. In that year and a half, there has been a tremendous amount of work that is needed to be done. Mr. Burt talked about one little tiny piece of it, which is huge. I would also bring your attention to the fact that when you started the budget process, you approved November 10th, 2014, what the budget priorities were going to be. And one of those was to establish a full-time Human Resources Director position. That was a completely separate position, and the full-time Pupil Personnel Director position. I applaud you for that. I understand why that went away because of funding. I believe that administration was fiscally responsible in trying to address the needs of the district in changing the HR position into what it is in your budget request right now. I can tell you that Cindy Chanel works like a dog. She and I work together, and probably in the last 18 months I've spent more than half of my time doing HR because there were functions that were not set up. This week is vacation week, and for some, if you choose to take it, this week she and I are working to put together an employee handbook, something that should have been done a long time ago, which we just have not had time to do in the last 18 months, literally. We work long hours, and we are cleaning up and setting up practices that are going to leave this district in good standing for years to come. But the effort that it does need to happen right now, and I understand collaborating with the town, totally understand that. Right now, Don Maslick does not have the time to collaborate with us. There are times we call, and there are times that she calls back, and she calls us for information. She is working around the clock as well. She has no idea what our over 600 employees are doing or not doing. She manages the pension plan for the town, which some of our employees are part of, but separate of that, they do nothing, none of the HR functions of this district. We have many, many more employees than the town does. Many. And complex, beyond certification, different bargaining units, non-affiliated employees. I really, when we cut the original HR director position out of here, my concern was the work that Cindy does, she'll continue to do, and she'll continue to work like a dog, because she does, but she needs to have the authority to make those decisions without me there. So Jeff is going to take on some of those, but there are employee investigations that go on, there is employee reporting that goes on, we're responding to CHRO, we're responding to unemployment, we're responding to workers' compensation. There are procedures that have been set up in place that have saved this district money and continue to improve the work that we're doing here, and which is saving you money. I just think that we need to continue that work. We're not done. There's still plenty of work to do, and I just think I would strongly urge you not to do that, because I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I thank you for allowing me to address you.
Thank you. Mrs. Arndt?
I hear your comments, Patty, and I think they're all very valid, but I would guess that if teachers and other staff had the opportunity to support teaching positions, they would be just as passionate about it. And if those decisions, those priorities that we came into our budget with were before we got cut $1.2 million. So things change. And I hear what you're saying. I would never suggest that the position is not a valid position. In my mind, I need teachers. And this administration has made it work in between the expertise that you have and the responsibility that Jeff has taken on. I would think that with Cindy Schnell as a support person, as you described her, that you'll make it work. And maybe next year we can think about doing something differently, but I'm not willing to do that at the expense of a classroom teacher.
Any other comments? Mr. Kemp?
It may be that we are all trying to figure out ways to save classroom teachers. This may not be the most prudent way to do it. The goal of doing that is admirable, but the discussion tonight has focused on one possible solution when, in fact, we've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars where we might otherwise go. This is probably one of the most dangerous places that we would want to arrive at, given the potential that we have for not handling our employees properly. All of the teachers and all of the rest of the staff that need to be, have their benefits administered properly, it's a very, very difficult job, and I don't know that we want to play with fire. You could more easily get me to cut something that's bricks and mortar and hardware and technology, as much as I would like to have us do that, than it would be to take action in this way, in order to get to the budget economies that we need to get at. And we need to get at 600,000 in this hour. And we've got 20 minutes left.
Mr. Stanton?
Just as a point of clarification, while I agree we have to get to the number, I don't believe we actually have to have the line items completely sorted out here in the next 20 minutes. My recollection is we've had budgets passed by the voters several times and then gone back and actually had to adopt the final number to whatever line items we had left. So I understand your point, Mr. Kemp, and I agree with it, but it may be that we actually don't get all of it figured out tonight.
Okay. Any other comments on this issue? We do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion to cut $25,000 from account number 51111? All those opposed? And voting to motion carried. Okay. Mr. Kemp?
I'd like to understand how the solutions to, that Dr. Conway has advanced here by going to the Alliance funds for the psychologist and wherever else Alliance is referred to as the solution, because I'd like to understand what it is that we were going to buy, or in the past year that we had purchased. Just because the Alliance dollars are there doesn't mean that it's just sitting there for us to go cherry pick. I mean, clearly, we're not going to be able to do something else. And I'd like to know what those something else's were, or would be, or both.
That was, yes, thank you. That was quite a few questions. The positions that are moving, the kindergarten position is in 14-15 in the Alliance grant. We had it in the binder here, it is in the local budget, and so we're just returning it to the Alliance grant. The danger there is in 2 more years when the grant falls off the table, we won't be able to fund the kindergarten teacher. The school psychologist for Skinner Road School is a new position. And so the kindergarten teacher is not taking any more Alliance dollars away. We would have probably spent it on something else, but it's not taking, and it's not building upon the total that we were spending in staff. The school psychologist, we had a school social worker doing a different district-wide position that we are no longer going to continue for next year in the proposed plan. And so we would put the school psychologist in there. So dollar for dollar, again, this would not increase the number of dollars we spend on staffing and salaries in the Alliance District grant, but certainly we could have spent that on other things as well. Technology would be one thing that we have spent a lot of the Alliance funding on. Mr. Burke, we just started to meet. The first draft is due within a couple of weeks, so the board hopefully will see the final draft before school is out. So may I ask Mr. Burke?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Thank you.
All right, through the chair. This past Alliance grant, we spent funds on, as you recall, the classroom libraries. We spent a significant amount of money, as well as training for Reader's Workshop from Columbia. We wanted to make sure that our teachers had the resources available to them to implement the Reader's Workshop. We had funds, other funds associated with professional development. We had funds, obviously, for technology, as well as the funds for the current personnel that are in the Alliance grant and will continue in the Alliance grant next year. This next year, some of the ideas, we will continue with professional development. We also purchased this year our new MAP assessment through NWEA, which again, talking about good data in the hands of our teachers. We just recently had a training in that, and it went very well last Monday, and teachers are very excited at all levels, K through 10 now. Teachers are very excited about that. So we will continue with that. We also this year purchased our new student information system, Aspen. As you know, that's got moved into our local budget. That is the core of what we do in the district in terms of maintaining our student data, so that's important that we maintain that in our local budget. But we do have some ideas for next year. Mostly it's around technology. We make sure that we do our replacement plan for our student desktops, get some more Chromebooks in the hands of our students. In addition, we have a separate technology grant, if you recall, that will get us wireless in our elementary buildings, we hope. We also are looking at more smartboard installations at the middle school and high school, LCD projector installations, the language lab at the high school, and et cetera. So we are still continuing with professional development and looking at technology.
Okay, anything else? Mrs. Ard?
Going to move to reduce the budget by $10,980 for other supplies and materials.
Is there a second?
Zach Bush?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Mrs. Bush?
I'd like to move to reduce the budget by $131,151,045. Little numbers. Out of the PPO, HMO, medical insurance.
Is there a second? Mr. Kemp? Any discussion? Mrs. Ard?
I'm going to support the motion, but it makes me a little nervous because that's a one-time shot. I mean, and then we're setting ourselves up to be in the hole. So it's a desperate time, I get it, but I'm going to support it because I can't suggest where that $131,000 should come from otherwise. But I think we should be very aware that we're setting ourselves up for next year.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Mrs. Bush?
I'd like to move to reduce the substitute teacher account by $26,010.55, please.
Is there a second? Mrs. Ard?
Second?
Any discussion?
I make a clarification, if you recall, that is contingent upon the additional reduction of teachers as well. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?
I'm opposed, but
Motion carries.
okay.
Okay. Mrs. Bush?
I'll keep going. I'd like to move that the school psychologist be reduced and by $56,451.
Is there a second? Who seconded?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay.
By implication, that means you're going to the Alliance grant to fund it.
I didn't explain it
Yeah,
in motion.
I mean, not that I'm in favor of that either, because we're also setting ourselves up for a fall in 2 years when that cliff hits.
I understand.
So by taking this $600,000 cut, we're really being set up for a bigger cliff than we had hoped to ever have to experience.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Opposed? Motion carries.
Just,
Yes?
sorry, as a point of order, nowhere in that motion did it say that it was going to be moved back to Alliance.
That's
So,
just the
I know.
understanding.
well, doesn't that have to be part of the motion?
No.
Because all you did was reduce the budget.
Because we haven't figured out our Alliance District funding yet, which can be done.
Ask that later in the
Okay,
year, you
all right.
may say no.
Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Arndt?
If the board would tolerate it, I'd like to make another suggestion on the lines of saving a teaching position. We have a full-time, we have budgeted for a full-time out-of-district administrator. And I'm going to suggest that if that position remains a half-time position, that this board has discussed in the past, the principal at the Loveland Hill School participating in some of those special ed responsibilities. And I continue to think that Mrs. Buell has, she was, not quite sure how to say this. She was compensated based on additional responsibilities, and that compensation remains in place, although she'll be doing Director of Pupil Personnel, no longer HR. So I'm wondering if that wouldn't be reasonable to ask her to work with a half-time person and accomplish what needs to be accomplished for out-of-district, along with the Loveland Hill principal, and reduce that account to where it was this year.
I just want to clarify, I believe it's a full-time position.
Out of district is a full-time position.
It is a full-time
Mr.
It
Bell.
was
position.
K through, I'm sorry, K through 12 special ed, I'm sorry, K through 12 special ed was half-time this year, correct? Mr. Giansanti's position was half-time.
And he was only 6 through 12, and Dr. Cassell was K through 5, so it was a full-time position with supervisor
With-
special
okay.
ed, 2 hats together.
Okay.
And out of district was also a full-time position, one person happened to have that. position as well. And another point of clarification, when Mrs. Buell's position goes back full-time in the union, her salary will change. So once this budget is passed, she will be back in the bargaining unit for the administrators, and her salary will be reduced. So the original plan was, if we had hoped she would move into the HR director. That position went a long time ago, so I don't think that's been changed. I haven't looked recently. But she will be back in the union. We can't negotiate that salary with her again. And
So
it
the
will be reduced.
139,287 will
Right.
not be the,
That is
that's
correct.
what's in there, but that's not.
Right, and that was because when the budget was first formulated, we were looking at the director of HR position. And so that's what that would have been, commensurate with what she made until the board negotiated that salary again. But now that she's going back to the director of pupil personnel,
Right.
she'll be in the budget at whatever the director is, same as director of teaching and learning, whatever that was in the contract.
Mr. Kim?
Well, have we taken the cut to reflect that change in dollars yet?
No, we have not.
We have not?
No.
Okay. And Michelle's comments had to do with also engaging the Loveland Hill School principal in doing some of the out-of-district activities, which seems like a reasonable request. So could we understand why that might not be a good idea?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again, please?
Basically, having the Loveland Hill School principal contribute some of their work product in working with some of the out-of-district placements.
Out-of-district placement is a full-time job, and so is the principal of Loveland Hill School.
Well,
Full-time
that's-
job. She's actually doing IEPs. She's certifying IEPs for us. So that is an administrative job that Dr. Pacell was doing for quite a while, and Mrs. Buell was doing for quite a while, and now she has taken over that position because she can do that from her office or after school and in the evening.
Well, I have to say, when we initially went to the Loveland Hill School concept, it was our expectation, frankly, that there would be more than 10 students in it, one way or the other, by bringing students from out of town or realigning some of our own, and certainly it has, let's say, broken even, okay? That's fair to say. What we were spending, we're getting back by not having to spend it out of town. But I'll also say that we had an expectation that the student headcount within Loveland would be greater than 10. And it's fair for us to say, having to pay a principal a full-time salary for that position is not what we had in mind. And to ask that position to help us with our financial challenges I think is a fair ask. Now, to say that it's a full-time position and leave it at that, and dismiss it as, oh, well, that's it, 10 students, full-time job, I don't think that sits well with the majority of the board. So I don't know where we're going to go with that. But I think we need to go somewhere. And if that position isn't freed up to help us budget-wise, I think it should. So somebody better give me an impassioned argument as to why we're paying that kind of money to handle the 10 kids.
But she already is doing some special ed work by approving all the IEPs. She's already doing that in addition to her job.
How many IEPs? There's only 10 kids. How
Oh,
many?
no, she does it for the whole school
The whole
district.
district. We have
How
over
many?
300 special ed students.
This person is handling 300 IEPs?
That's correct. She clears each one of them. If I could make one more point of clarification, you are absolutely correct in that we break even. We budget just about $500,000 and we pay just about $500,000. I would say that also means we save about another $500,000. If all 10 of these students had to be outplaced,
I
it would cost
understand
us
that.
much more.
I
Okay, I'm
understand.
sorry, as long as you understood that. Thank you. I apologize.
We're okay with that, but we also thought there were going to be more students than 10. Now, if I did not realize that there were 300 IEPs that the Loveland Hill School principal is very much involved with on a day-by-day basis, so. All right.
Mr. Stenson?
There's not a motion on the floor currently, correct?
No, there's not.
Thank you. Given the time constraints and the obvious need to have continued discussions on many of these budget items, I would like to make a motion that we reduce the Board of Education budget by $431,858, which is the remaining amount required to get us the $600,000 that the town removed from our budget, and with specific line items to be determined later.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Comment? Let's see, Mrs. Arndt?
Does that mean that it will, that the remaining dollars to be eliminated will come back to the board for discussion, not to the administration, but back to the board? Is that a given in your motion?
Absolutely.
Mr. Kemp?
Yeah, and I just want to say at this point, in this deliberation that we're undergoing, I think it needs to be understood by not only ourselves, but others, that we have not gone to a financial well that has always been our option. And we have chosen not to do that. And that is the open choice program. Most of the school systems in this region take on roughly 100 kids, some 200, some 50. We take on 5. The amount of money that we do not bring into this school system that would not go through the town at all, they wouldn't touch it, it would pass through directly, is frankly a staggering amount of money. But we made the decision that we thought that those problems that would come to us from Hartford would end up costing us a lot of that money, and certainly a lot of grief and aggravation, and that those kids would be elementary kids, that many of whom would end up at Lake Street School and our other elementary schools. And I'm talking about $1 million that this board year over year has decided it would be best for our school system not to go tap that well, that the state is trying to insist that we take each year. Other school systems have done it, and we have had the fortitude to send a letter to the state commissioner and say no thank you. We could have done that. We could have solved some of these financial problems by taking on those kids. And then we would find out, as some of the towns have, that it's not a free ride. But I don't think the general population understands that very important decision that we have made year over year. And I think as a collective group here intend to do it in the near future, at least. So now I'll vote for this motion, but I had to get that off my chest, I'll tell you.
Okay, Mr. Stansel?
Thank you. I actually totally echo your comments, Mr. Kemp, and I believe when we discussed it in early March, we actually said, depending on the budget situation that we face, that we may reconsider our decision not to accept any more students. So I absolutely agree. It may be a conversation that needs to be on the agenda for our next regular meeting.
Mrs. Bush?
It pains me to even think about cutting the amount of teachers that we need to cut to get to that amount. So I'd like to charge the superintendent, Mr. Picaro, the assistant superintendent, and the board members to continue to look for ways that we can save teachers and before we make the final cuts. I will support it because we have to do this, but looking for those creative ways, I commend Ms. Arndt for trying to make a difference. Sometimes we look for things and we don't know the ramifications of what would end up happening if we made those cuts. And that's why we need to continue to look It's not a done deal that we're gonna cut all those teachers, because it's a very difficult thing to do that and still have the education programs that we do in our schools, the very good ones. So, until we meet again, I really would push everyone to keep looking for those ways where we can cut that doesn't take away our staff.
Anyone else want to speak to the motion on the floor? Mrs. Arndt?
Will you be setting another budget workshop?
We will need to do that, or we can do it at a regular board meeting, right? We could do it at a board meeting.
In hour pieces is kind of, I understand they're already set dates, but these hour pieces might make it a little more difficult. And may I ask for clarification from Mr. Kemp? We talked about choice, and we said, no, thank you. I understand that. And are you suggesting that we should not be doing that, or you were explaining to the public why we say no, thank you, because we could be taking on more than we don't handpick students, so we get what we get, and they may cost us more than what we're reimbursed for. Okay, thank you.
And if we should make the decision to add more students, depending on the number, we might need more teachers.
Right.
So it's a
Right. Catch-22.
right. Tom?
It is a catch-22, but I agree with Mr. Kemp. And the reason why is we never know, even when students move into the district, what type of students we get. And if we can, help our budget a little bit more, plus give kids the insight on how wonderful Vernon school system can be, I would definitely like to look at that again.
All right, anyone else on this motion to cut $431,858 to be decided where it comes from later? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Now we need a motion to adjourn the budget workshop, Mr. Stansel.
Motion to adjourn.
For a second. Mrs. Bush. Second. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening again. I'd like to welcome Mr. Kovac, Mrs. Jengris, and Mrs. Schaefer from the Town Council, and thank you for joining us. We will start with item 1.0, the consent agenda. Mrs. Arndt,
Move to approve item 1.1.
is there a second? Mr. Kemp? Does anyone want to pull any of these items, or are we all set? Okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 2.0, opportunity for the Board of Ed to add or delete agenda items. Does anyone want to add or delete an agenda item? Item 2.2, Rockville High School Student Representative Report. No one is here. Now we're on to Community Forum. 3.0, opportunity for comments of agenda items, potential future agenda items, or general information provided to the board from citizens and community organizations. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? Okay. And move on to item 4.0, personnel. Assignment of the director of the Vernon Regional Adult-Based Education. Dr. Kyle.
Thank you very much. As you know, Dr. Carl Mandel is retiring at the end of this year. He did agree to stay until we found a suitable candidate to replace him. Mrs. Buell gathered a group of, I'm going to say, 8 people, 4 from outside of adult ed, but in the system, and the other 4 from adult ed. So several administrators and actually one student who was not only won the superintendent's award this year, but is winning a statewide adult education student award. So those people got together, they interviewed, it was not easy. We had some internal candidates who both prepared very, very well, and truly investigated adult ed and all that it would mean. And this group did recommend Mr. Stephen Phelps for the position, and he is here with us this evening. This is one that is in the contract. It is in the contract. Mr. Phelps has been here for quite a number of years, 11 or 12, and so he would be on the top step according to that contract. His resume is attached to the agenda brief. Again, this is a reassignment of administrators from within, but because it was such an important position, we had several people from within interested in the position. We did want to do a thorough interview from within, and so I recommend and would ask that you affirm that assignment or reassignment of Mr. Phelps, and he is here in case you have any questions.
I would like to add that he was also interviewed by several board members and administrators too as a second round of interviews. Is there, Mrs. Arnold?
I'm wondering, Dr. Conway, if you can please tell me where that line item is in the budget. I can't find it.
It is behind central office, if my memory serves me correctly.
At the end of central
It should
office.
be right at the end of central office. Yes, it's, of the blue sheets, it's page 116 of 125. And the backup is page 117 of 125. Should be in the central office
Where are you?
area. In the gold sheets, it would have been page 117 and 118, and I don't think it changed at all, so you still have your gold sheets in there. The gold would have been 117, and right immediately following that is 118.
And it is still grant funded?
Yes, it is.
Anybody want to make a motion? Mrs. Arnold?
I'll move that the Vernon Board of Education affirm the assignment of Stephen Phelps to the position of Director of Vernon Regional Adult-Based Education effective July 1, 2015.
You seconded? Mr. Kemp? Okay, any further discussion, questions, comments? Mrs. Arnold?
I just say I was fortunate enough to be part of the group that interviewed Steve, and the enthusiasm that he has for taking over this position was catching, and convinced, I think those of us, me for sure, I want to speak for myself, that he seems to be a fit for the job. He acknowledged that he's on a learning curve, but his desire to succeed and his enthusiasm for the position convinced me that he's the right man.
I think we also acknowledge that whoever takes this position is a learning curve because it's not a job that most people have in their career. Any other comments, questions? All right, all those in favor of appointing Mr. It's unanimous. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations, welcome aboard. Okay, we'll move on to item 4.2, non-renewal of teacher contracts. Dr. Conlon.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. Non-tenured teachers' contracts must be non-renewed if they are going to be by May 1 of every year. That is a change for those of you who've been on the board for a while. It used to be April 1, and so it is now May 1. We made many reductions in the first round of reductions to the budget for next year, and so these 8 people would be non-renewed for the purpose of the budget reductions or for losing their position to another person whose position was eliminated and they were able to bump this person. So there are eight people here, social studies, science, language arts, business, language arts, family consumer science, and social worker. So I would ask that you make a motion to non-renew these non-tenured teachers' contracts.
Mr. Kemp.
Regretfully, I will. That the board move that the Vernon Board of Education non-renew the contracts of the non-tenured teachers listed above, effective at the conclusion of the 2014-2015 school year.
Is there a second? Mr. Linton? Any discussion, comments? Mrs. Arden?
I'm wondering how many of the positions that are being non-renewed at the middle school are due to attrition or actual cuts in staff?
We actually figured that out this afternoon, Mrs. Beal, if you want to run to my office and get those numbers, that'd be great.
I'm going to ask you the same for the high school.
So, we actually have done them all together. If you wouldn't mind, Mrs. Beal, read them off. We have chart paper all over the office.
We just want the numbers?
Please.
That included the proposed cuts, so.
You're right, and we did that as well. So we had 17 cuts earlier.
Right.
We only had 2 retirements.
Right.
So PE Health at the high school, that was eliminated, however, the position, so that was not refilled. And the other was a special educator, and at the Center Road School, and that would be filled by Mrs. Ross as soon as her principal's residency is done this year. So that's she would just step into that position. Otherwise, we had resignations of teachers, and they have been filled by many of these people.
We also created 2 new positions through the PDG grant for
Preschool.
which offset the reductions that needed to be made because we moved people into those positions. So even given, if you were to cut the proposed numbers, obviously you didn't do that tonight, but if you were to do that, the actual numbers, there would be 15 positions, 15 people would lose positions. A couple of those are less than full-time positions, but there would be 15 people impacted by the 24 cuts that were originally proposed, but that's more than what you had. So there were 2 retirements and 2 new positions and 5 people leaving their current positions.
Do you have the breakdown for middle school and high school?
The certification for high school and for 7th and 8th grade goes from 7 through 12, so there were many dominoes, such as, I'll give you one example, if the board had taken the proposed cut tonight, one of them was a social studies teacher at the middle school. That person, a person also happens to be certified in middle school language arts, so we would move that person there. That person would bump a 7-12 language arts person who would then go to the high school, bumping a high school person. We then were able to do something at the middle school and move people down into the elementary. So it's hard to say. I would say the majority of the people, the 15 who actually would be walking out the door, are from the middle school because that's the most new hires, wouldn't you say?
I could count that, I'm sorry. 2, 3, of all of them, if we had finished taking the cuts this evening, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 from the 7 of the 15 cuts would be from the high school due to bumping or leaving. And then the remainder 8 would be from the middle schools, is the number I have. For a total of 15 people being displaced from their positions.
Any other questions? Thank you, Penny. Mrs. Russell?
What impact, I know you can't go down every scenario, but what impact would this have on the middle school and the high school?
It has great impact. You know that the class sizes in both of those buildings have been getting smaller and smaller, and so, you know, it always has an impact, but you'd be going from, for instance, Algebra 1 has an average class size of 12 and a half, and so now there'll be 18 in a class. Still a reasonable amount, but certainly that's, you know, that's 50% over what the teachers had to begin with. At the middle school, it would be similar, except that, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Harrison was looking at adding the world language teachers to the teams in 7th grade and 8th grade. So if they're a full member of the team, that will allow them to spread the students out over 5 teachers as opposed to 4 teachers. And so that will keep the class size relatively the same as it was in grades 7 and 8 by adding those people in. So he's working on it. So right now, the effect, including the 7 suggestions that we made at the beginning of this evening, it would have more effect, I say, at the high school than at the middle school. I don't think Mr. Harrison would 100% agree with me, but he's...
Okay.
Sorry.
At the middle school, we are losing, is it 2 teams or 1 team?
2. Well, no, 1. We voted on 2 was on the, we didn't make that decision.
Right. Okay. Knowing that we're gonna, you know, that we have done that with the 1 team eliminated, how will this affect the teachers and not the students?
I think that it affects both at the high school and the middle school. The morale and the climate is affected greatly. When your next door neighbor, who's vibrant, hit the ground running, and been there for 2 years, is now having to walk out the door, or has just gotten married, or is just having a baby, or it truly affects the people in the building tremendously, absolutely tremendously.
And what can we do to boost up morale?
I wish I had the answer to this one. This is a very tough one.
It is.
And we are empathetic and we listen and do what we can to keep people together.
Okay.
I know Mr. Rocket is here and he's been emailing his staff that, you know, we're going to keep working through this and we're going to make it. So
Thank you.
Just have to keep strong.
Thanks.
Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns about the motion on the floor?
Just one more clarification. These were from the first round of cuts.
Right.
So these were not proposed from tonight at all.
Okay, well, we're going to vote on the motion. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Don't want to, but
Nobody wants to.
I know.
Okay, item 4.3. Because this is an executive session item, I suggest that we move it to the end of the meeting, if everyone's all right with that.
And you will need to take action on that one way or the other because it is a request. So the board would either have to approve the request or deny the request at that point.
Okay, so we'll move it to after item 7.0. Okay. Next item is 5.1, Rockville High School graduation date. Dr. Conley.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rocket is coming to the podium at this point. The seniors at Rockville High School attend school for 181 days because they start the day after their underclassmen start, the 9th graders start. And our project graduation was unable to move the date from the 16th to the 17th, which is the 181 first day rather. So I'll turn this over to Mr. Rocket. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Conway. That's it in a nutshell. I'm sure you all know that communities recently, in the past 15 years, have been looking to provide a safe and controlled activity for graduating seniors after graduation. It's really a nationwide phenomenon and has saved many, many lives. It's also a great way for kids to end high school by something after graduation. The project graduation organization is separate from the high school. They are not a high school organization. That's done intentionally in all the schools I know of by way of keeping sort of a Chinese wall up for liability purposes. However, like with a lot of community organizations, we work very closely with them. In this case, it's, as with most places, a group of parents, typically of graduating seniors with some juniors and sophomore parents that sort of chip in to figure out how things go when their kids graduate. In this case, our kids, well, it's usually a secret, but everybody kind of knows. We go to Nomads, usually in South Windsor, for our post-graduation event. We've been going there for some years now. Scheduling is always kind of dicey because many schools compete for that, and you have to sort of play it fast and loose with guessing when to book that date. In this case, there was an internal miscommunication between the project graduation folks. Frankly, they're mortified. It was originally scheduled for the 16th. They changed that in good faith, and then, of course, it turns out the 17th is our graduation date. They jumped through many hoops afterwards to try and get the 17th. They offered to exchange dates with other organizations. They called up many high schools in the area. They looked at other venues. By this time, of course, it was too late. They indicate that if they can't get the graduation date changed, then they really would not be able to provide a post-graduation event. And they don't say that by way of threat. They're mortified. They just don't know what to do. They're wonderful folks. They put in hundreds of hours, and so I'd ask the board to support the request to change graduation date to the 16th. We would hold school on the 17th. There's a variety of ways we can calendar that. I've been involved in situations in previous schools where seniors graduate several days before other underclass, and the other way where everybody finishes and then we have to wait, and this is far more preferable. So with one way or another, we can accommodate it. That's it. Any questions?
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I don't think this is a very big deal. I mean, they're getting their required 180 days, so I certainly don't have any problem with giving them an extra day off. Tell them they don't get senior skip day this year.
I'll tell them. I tell them every year.
Yeah, so I would like to make a motion that the Board of Education declare the Rockville High School graduation date for Tuesday, June 16th, 2015.
Is there a second? Any comments, questions, concerns? I do want to add that we have done this before to accommodate project graduations. It's not like we're sending any precedent here, so. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you so much, and on behalf of the project graduation.
Okay, now item 5.2, first reading of proposed new Board of Education policies. These are just for your review. I don't know if anyone has any questions or concerns about these policies. And they will be on our agenda at our next meeting to vote them in. If you have no concerns, we can move on to the next item, which is the Board of Education Finance Committee report.
Thank you. Mr. Porcaro has left two items for you. One appeared in your packet, and that would have been the fiscal year-end procedures memo that went out to all staff, all administrators and department heads with the ending dates. We expect that most transactions would have been completed at this point in the year. We, of course, know that for graduation, we rent several thousand chairs, and so there are things like that that do come up at the end of the year every year, but we anticipate that that most larger items have been purchased and services have been complete. Some services go through the end of the year. We're also fine-tuning special ed at this point. This is where we make sure that the amount we have encumbered is matching our bills so that we don't have any leftover funding at the end of the year or vice versa. At this point in the year, we have expended all but 5.4% of the budget. So you do have, if it wasn't in your packet, it is in your yellow folder, a year-to-date at this point. And Mr. Porcaro is working at ensuring that those negative numbers, that amendments and transfers will be coming to you soon to ensure that those were taken care of. He was not concerned, and he apologizes for not being able to be here this evening.
Anybody have any questions that we want to direct to Mr. Porcaro for answers later? Okay, thank you. now move on to item 5.4, which is an update on our executive search for our new superintendent. And I just want to share this information with you. We have, the search is beginning right now with the intent of naming a new superintendent by this summer. The board will serve as the search committee as it executes its statutory responsibility for selecting a new superintendent. The board will provide multiple opportunities for stakeholder involvement at several points in the process. There will be focus groups, online surveys, and interviews of some individuals. These will include both electronic and in-person opportunities. We will be letting the public know when we are having this focus group, so we hope as many people as possible will be able to attend. The search will include state, regional, and national outreach through multiple means, and the board has engaged the services of NESDEC, which is the New England School Development Council, to facilitate the search, and Dr. Elizabeth Osga will serve as lead consultant. And so we are working on the schedule now, the calendar on when we will schedule the focus groups and all that. As soon as we have that firmed up, we will let everybody know when we will be doing that. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so hopefully we'll have updates for you at every, or at most meetings as we move along in the process. Okay. Thank you, and we will move on to item 6.0, to review and update the Board of Education calendar. Anybody have anything for the calendar? Okay. Opportunity for questions from the press. They're not here. So now, sorry.
Move to go into executive session to discuss item 4.3 and invite the superintendent.
No. Okay, is there a second? Mr. Stansel? All those in favor of going to executive session? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Do you want to just run to my office? Or can I wait here? It's up here.
Does it have to wait for register?
Yes.
System is on.
Oh. Can't shut it down. Yeah. No, that's a picture out there. Great picture.
Night.
Nice job.
I'm
It was Dave's. You did fine.
Hey, what else we gotta do?
It's a newsletter.
Thank you.
2 hour budget workshop. An hour before a board meeting, we're getting sloppy with that. It was 1 hour slam bam.
How many 3-hour budget sessions? We would have,
Listen,
10, 12.
you want Dave to tell you about the old days. Not again.
David doesn't remember the old.
Not again.
You watched it on TV,
These things were marathons, Mike.
Peter, is the microphone on?
Oh, I will, thank you.
No, we don't need that.
You better do it, I'll mess it up.
Not like last time when we left the microphone
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
I think I cleaned it right.
No, oh, yes, yes, she was able to do that. Transfer
Fucking
everything
basketball
onto
player,
the computer.
microphone on.
Oh, yeah.
She said she cleaned it up.
Yeah, we don't need one of those incidents.
All right, is someone willing to make a motion? Mrs. Zardi? There's a suggested motion here.
I move to approve the request for hardship
As
as
discussed.
discussed in executive session.
Is there a second? Mr. Stansel?
Second.
Any discussion, comments, concerns? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Now, one motion left. Mr. Stansel?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Linton? All those in favor? Unanimous. That is 8:40.